Welcome to Cracking Cooperstown, where we talk all things Baseball Hall of Fame and Hall of Fame collecting. Join us as we discuss Hall of Fame voting, autographs, cards, baseballs, resumes and trajectories, debate and discussion as we look to crack the code for Cooperstown. I'm your host, Jake, also known as Legends Never Die on YouTube, and I am joined by my good friend, Dom Manna of Staven Sports Cards here on YouTube. Welcome to episode 1, Dom.
Jake, I'm glad we're finally doing this, man. It's really exciting. We always have such great talks about the Hall of Fame offline all the time. And when you kind of came up with this idea to make this a thing, I just really am happy to be a part of it. And this first conversation we're about to have is a really exciting one.
Yeah, I've been kicking around this idea for almost a year and kind of looking for somebody to do the show with me. And we've become really good friends. We talk the Hall of Fame a ton, like you mentioned, both from a real life Baseball Hall of Fame perspective and also the different ways that we collect the Baseball Hall of Fame within the hobby. So between that and your technological and podcast expertise, you made an easy choice as my co-host. So thank you for being a part of it, man. But why don't you tell everybody what we're getting into today?
Absolutely. So Jake hinted at it. I also do a podcast called Solo Shot Sports. It's got its own YouTube channel where I cover the today's storylines as I round the bases. And because I love the Hall of Fame and the history of this rich game, I throw it back down the third base line and kind of give that day in baseball history, highlighting a player event that is just super significant to keep those stories alive. But on my podcast, I talked about a topic that was kind of a hot one in the news, active Hall of Famers that we're seeing today. And Jake actually wrote an article about this back in 2020. And it's something that you're always thinking about if you're a Hall of Fame nut like us. You're trying to think, which of these active guys are we lucky enough to be watching Hall of Famers? Do we need to get their rookie cards, their autographs, etc.? And just appreciating like that story of the game. So we had a really fun conversation going back and forth about it. And I wrote my own article to match yours and tell them how many active Hall of Famers there typically are in a given year.
Yeah, so back in 2020, I did this for the first time just for myself, for fun, because, I'm a Hall of Fame nut, like you mentioned, just like you are. And I thought it'd be a fun exercise because I had saw an article on Bleacher Report or somewhere online, maybe Twitter, that said the average number of any given year that there would be 40 active Hall of Famers in any given year. And I compared that to, vintage sets, playing days, Hall of Famers and vintage sets. And that seemed to be about right. So I kind of based it off that article and taking a look at vintage sets. And so in 2020, I wrote this article for myself. And as you can imagine, and we'll get into it, there'll be slam dunk guys that are at the end of their career. There'll be guys that a lot of people think are going to be Hall of Famers, kind of on the path. But in that 40, as you go deeper, there are going to be guys that like you're going out on a limb. You're taking some shots on, first, second, third year players that you just don't know. Because a Hall of Fame career is going to take a minimum of 10 years to qualify. And realistically, their career is probably going to last 15 to 20 years and then 5 more years before they're eligible. So we're talking about just in 2020, when I wrote the first article, we're talking about at least 2040 before any of those guys could be eligible for the, rookie guys. And ones that may retire, tomorrow at that time, you're looking 5 years out. That's the fastest any of them could make it at the time of them being active. So Dom and I, like he mentioned, after I heard on his podcast, I told him about my original one, and then I rewrote one for 2023 for guys that we're seeing now. Dom wrote his own, and it was fun for me to compare my 2020 to my 2023 and see how it changed. And I think this is going to become an annual thing for us, Dom. I think we're going to do this probably every year.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to put these articles out too. I think that would be really fun for people to be able to read more about why we have players ranked where we do. But you are a small hall guy. You are someone that rewards the long career and the milestones that come along with having such a long career. So let the people know at home what your qualifiers are for a Hall of Famer.
Sure. Yeah, definitely kind of we come from two similar but different schools of thought here. Um I'm a big quantitative guy. The milestones matter a lot to me. And I'm gonna walk through each of them, but the milestones matter a lot to me. What I call secondary qualifiers are like not the magic number. Milestones also matter to me. I tend to reward longevity, like Dom mentioned, and I also tend to have small haul tendencies. Now, there are exceptions to those rules because of my parameters. So I guess I'll just jump right into mine, and then I'll let Dom share his thoughts to give you guys kind of a framework for our train of thought and how we're going to discuss these guys. So for me, uh, each of the major hitting categories, there's and pitching categories, there's what I call an automatic qualifier and then a secondary qualifier. Because again, I'm more quantitative than I am qualitative. So home runs, automatic is 500. So you get to the 500 home run club, you're an automatic Hall of Famer in my eyes. You don't have to meet anything else. Okay. Another automatic would be 3,000 hits or 1,800 runs or 1,800 RBIs or 800 stolen bases. Okay, those are your hitting counting stats that are automatic for me. Then for pitching, there is 300 wins. Yes, I know we may not ever see another one again, but stick with me here. 3,000 strikeouts, automatic for pitchers, or 500 saves for relief pitchers. As far as awards go, my automatic qualifiers: Gold Gloves, 12 is automatic. Silver Sluggers, 12 is automatic. Cy Youngs, 3 is automatic. MVP, 3 is automatic. All-Star, 15 is automatic. Batting titles, 5 automatic. Pitching titles, 5 automatic. And Triple Crowns, 2 is automatic. Now, you may say, Jake, those are really steep. Like we know you said small hall. Okay, now is where I get into the secondary qualifiers. For me to make them a Hall of Famer, if they don't meet any of the automatic qualifiers, they need to hit 2 of the secondary qualifiers. So for a hitter, that could mean any combination of 2 of 400 home runs, 2,500 hits, 1,500 runs, 1,500 RBI, 500 stolen bases, and as far as awards go, 7 Gold Gloves, 7 Silver Sluggers, 2 MVPs, 10 All-Stars, 3 batting titles, or a Triple Crown. Okay? So if they have either 1 automatic for me or 2 secondary qualifiers, as a hitter, they would qualify. Same for a pitcher. The secondary qualifiers for me for pitchers are 200 wins, 2,500 Ks, 400 saves, of course, the Gold Gloves as well. Cy Young's is 2. MVPs is also 2. All-Stars still 10. And then pitching titles 3 or a pitching Triple Crown 1. So I will often refer to mine both with the number or automatic qualifier or secondary qualifiers. But that is the framework for how I look at it. Again, I'm all about those milestones. I reward longevity, and those thresholds mean a lot to me. Dom, you're a little bit different. So explain your system and kind of your blueprint for what makes a Hall of Famer in your eyes.
I know you just threw a lot at the people.
So many numbers.
It's a lot to take in.
So many.
Especially the thresholds that you have, which are so high. I do hold those historic like club numbers highly. So I didn't change many of your automatics, but I am also a bigger Hall guy. I like to see the players get honored, especially while they're still with us. There's been so many cases where great players didn't get to enjoy their moment in the sun in the Baseball Hall of Fame. So I moved my qualifiers down. So to me, 300, which doesn't seem like a lot in today's game, but I don't have anybody as a Hall of Fame candidate for me if they were busted for performance enhancing drugs. I'm not talking about the steroid era where a lot of people may or may have not have been using. I'm talking about once baseball started cracking down and suspending players, they get caught, they broke a written rule, they're off my board. So 300, not the easiest thing to get clean. Big sluggers will get well over 300, but not every position is known for that kind of power over that kind of career. The next one, it's the rule of 2000, and the Baseball Hall of Fame has been sticking true to that since the expansion era. 2000 hits puts you on the Hall of Fame radar. I'm not saying that it gets you in, it's not automatic, but it should be a qualifier because there's a lot of cases that people pump where they don't have 2,000 hits, and that's almost a bigger detriment than them not having 2,500 like in your case. So I have that. For runs and RBIs, I have it at 1,000. To me, if you have to have a 10-year career to be eligible for the Hall of Fame. So if you're averaging somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 to 100 RBIs a year for a decade, like that's a pretty great career, and it's in the ballpark of a Hall of Famer. For stolen bases, you had it at 500 for a qualifier. Even with the new rules, I think 300 is a fair number. There's not a ton of people in the 300 steal club. It's a lot more than the 500 steal club, obviously, but I think speed matters, and I'm not giving it to the guys that stole 20 bases for a couple of years, but the guys that are able to compile 300, I think that really means something to go along with the 300 home runs. For the pitching, I left it the same. I think those are all pretty fair for qualifiers. It should be harder to get in for a pitcher than a hitter. You have to be able to like compile and show that dominance. And for the awards, I took the Gold Gloves and Silver Sluggers down to 5. To me, if you're considered the best defender or hitter at your position for half a decade, that means something. So I really gave credit there for the half decade at 5. MVPs and Cy Youngs, I have the Cy Young qualifier as 1, and for MVPs it's 2, but 1 for pitchers because pitching MVPs are kind of like a next level accomplishment. It doesn't happen quite as often. Then for the batting titles and pitching titles, kept them at 3, Triple Crowns at 1, but I added some bonus caveats worth half a qualifier each. So a Rookie of the Year, there's been plenty of what could have been, but plenty of starts to Hall of Fame careers that started with a Rookie of the Year, and you only have one opportunity to win that award compared to a Cy Young or MVP where you can win that in a year. A championship series or World Series MVP, the postseason matters to me. And while I'm not going to go to those cumulative postseason stats, I think being named the most valuable player of those big series is a feather in your cap for sure. A career 300 batting average or better. Batting average still matters to me, and you're going to see at the very end of my list why that still matters. But 300 career batting average, a lot of people aren't able to do it, especially swinging for the fences in today's game. A career ERA under 3.5, especially since the steroid era and the rise of home runs and the ballparks being made smaller with shorter fences. Keeping your ERA under 3.5 is an accomplishment. And a 60-plus career WAR. I'm not the biggest analytics guy, but I do think it helps fill in a lot of the holes that the standard stats have. And 60 WAR is quite a bit to compile, especially because you can have negative WAR seasons if you're a bad defender, bad hitter, etc. So those are mine. And because I lowered all your qualifiers outside of pitching, I made it where you need to have 4 qualifiers for you to be someone that I would put on my Hall of Fame ballot if you don't have one of the automatic qualifiers. So I adhered to you a little bit, but I definitely made my own rules with my list.
Well, that's what makes us a good combination, Dom, because we differ on some of these things. And there's a couple points you made that I do just want to, I guess, plant my flag here on some comments that you made. where you said, PED guys, you're a no after it was established that it was illegal in baseball. On PEDs until David Ortiz. Sorry, Dom, you're a Red Sox fan, I know. But until David Ortiz got in, I was a flat no on PEDs. However, he was not proven for steroids. He failed the test. Granted, I understand that the test was supposed to remain anonymous. That was not supposed to be leaked. I get it. But we do know that he failed a test for some substance. It could have been Adderall. It could have been steroids. We don't know. We may never know. But because he did get in, when he failed a test, I am now, and I hate it because I was anti-PEDs forever. But now I say let him in. If you let one in, let them all in. Now, I guess as far as my fandom, the ones that have admitted and more or less asked for forgiveness in a way, I'm softer towards, like, I guess as a human and a fan. But the guys that have continued to deny, I don't exactly love them, even though let them one in, let them all in. The second thing that you did mention that I wanted to touch on was, while I'm a little more small haul tendency and you're a little more big haul tendency, you do have aspects of the qualitative in your criteria, where you do have a few sabermetrics. You have WAR in there, a couple things more along those lines, where I lean more quantitative because, like, for me, if you said, who would you rather have? Whose career would you rather have? Sandy Koufax or Warren Spahn? I say Warren Spahn, not just because I'm rocking the Braves gear, okay? They're both left-handed and all that. It's just a good comparison. I'm a Braves fan, but I'm a no on Dale Murphy. That tells you I'm not biased. But Spahn had 363 wins, way over 2,000 strikeouts, tons of all-star, all that, okay? Very long, successful career. He hit some of those major milestones. I don't like the word compiled, but he compiled some great numbers, okay? Where Koufax is your quintessential peak Hall of Famer. Because if you ask me the question, okay, Jake, one game scenario, anybody at their best, who's your starter? Yeah, I mean, Koufax, come on. But whose career would I rather have as a Hall of Famer? Warren Spahn. So that's kind of how I explain my thoughts, how they kind of differ from yours. The third thing, and it's interesting, you called yourself a speed guy and that you appreciated the game. I see myself the same way, yet my threshold is higher. Now, granted, that may be because if you do look at that 300 stolen base club, it greatly increases that number of qualified players at that era. And I think that it could change here in the next decade or so, as we see the change in the rules and how stolen bases are approached and, what numbers guys do reach. There are players on pace this year that could steal 60 plus, and that hasn't happened in a while. So we'll see. But let's jump into the list. That's what everybody's listening for. They want to know who we think these 40 players are that are playing today that will someday make the Hall of Fame. And this will be unique, in my opinion, for this podcast, is often we will be talking about guys that are already retired. So it's ironic we're starting with active guys, but it's Hall of Fame prospecting in a way, if you will. And I don't know about you, Dom, but that's the only kind of prospecting I do.
Yeah, it's the main one. I'll still get some Red Sox rookies every now and then, but it's about the Hall of Fame for me with the new stuff.
All right, man. Well, hey, let's jump into the list and let's go 1 to 40, because the 1 and 2s, the guys at the top, they're going to be your slam dunks. We're not going to talk a long time about them. We'll get more into the middle here before we really have some discussion. So lead us off, Dom.
My number 1, and I know this is going to be controversial to some people, but it's Mike Trout.
I don't know if that will be controversial to many people.
If you're just looking at body of work, I think it can be controversial to some people. But to me, like, if I could vote for any one active player to get into the Hall, I would vote for Mike Trout. And he's just been fantastic. putting up all the career stats that you want to see, the WAR numbers through the roof. Like, he's just considered like this player's generation, the Mantle, the Griffey, the Mays, that type of player. That's Mike Trout. So he's clearly my number one in this tier of 6 that we all agree on are slam dunk cases.
I've got him at 5 of my 6. The way I look at him is, he's got 3 MVPs. That's his automatic qualifier for me. He's on pace for a lot of things, and a lot of things I think he will hit. I don't think there's much argument from many people. I've got him 5 of 6, but if he retired tomorrow, I'd vote for him. So now my number one, since you did not have Trout number one, mine is Miguel Cabrera. He's in both the 500 home run club and 3,000 hit club. I mean, 2 magic numbers there.
Yeah, Miggy is great. He's my 2. I just think part of the Hall of Fame conversation, like when we're talking about players that are in this same tier to us of like slam dunk guys, it kind of comes down to like what the memories are to an extent, and like that once you're like picking hairs, it's basically like the popularity and everything like that. And Trout as a rookie was pushing Miguel Cabrera, who was the best hitter in the American League, for MVP awards and all these different things, batting titles, etc. So to me, like Mike Trout, like from the jump, was on prime Cabrera level. So I have to give Trout the edge. But like you said, insane career. Those 2 exclusive clubs, he's one of 7 guys to get there. He's a slam dunk.
When, for those of you listening on podcast, we are also showing pieces from our collection of these guys that we have. Dom showed a finest Mike Trout rookie. I didn't show anything for Trout because I don't have any Trout cards, shockingly enough. For Miguel Cabrera, Dom, show yours again for the people on YouTube.
Yeah, I got the 2000 tops traded rookie.
Yeah, and he's got that in one of those funny plastic holders. We'll talk more about those later. And I've got a 2012 Miguel Cabrera 5-star autograph that I'm showing. But who's next on your list, Dom? We'll go through these slam dunk guys.
Yeah, next on my list is the last guy that I have a card of, actually, and that's Justin Verlander.
I have the same card.
Yep. He is – Kershaw has that amazing prime. Scherzer has been fantastic. And the other guy who doesn't get the same love as those 3 also had an amazing career. But if you just look at it, he was so dominant in Detroit, fell off and reinvented himself, and he wants to be this generation's Nolan Ryan pitching into his 40s. The fact that he's winning Cy Youngs in his 40s and championships and being an ace, like, I don't care how he's looking with the Mets right now. Like, he is the best right-handed pitcher of a generation, and he would definitely be my first pick for the pitchers.
I also have him as my first pitcher. I had him number 2. We showed our 2005 tops, Verlander rookies there. For me, 3 Cy Youngs and 3,000 strikeout club, man. I mean, there's not a ton of pitchers that can say that in the history of the game. So that's another slam dunk. Next on the list, I actually have another pitcher next. And what makes Verlander a Hall of Famer to me in the future also makes this guy a Hall of Famer. And that's Max Scherzer. I've got his tops rookie here. He also has 3 Cy Youngs and is in the 3,000 strikeout club. Him and Verlander are only separated by, I think, 20, 30 strikeouts on the all-time list. So it's interesting to see them, and on the same team now, kind of go back and forth on that all-time leader list. And it'll be fun to see which one of them edges the other in that category.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'd Kershaw ahead of Scherzer personally, just because of the prime and the left-handed and the much lower ERA. But you can't really go wrong with Mad Max. He's fantastic. And like you said, 3,000 strikeouts and one of, I think, 6 pitchers to have a Cy Young in each league, which is a pretty unique thing as well.
Mm-hmm. When you mentioned Kershaw, he's next on my list. I've got a 2012 5-star of Kershaw here. And the only reason I had him lower, he's also got the 3 Cy Youngs, but he will hit the 3,000 hit club this season. And I love Kershaw. I'm a big fan of him. When he's done, he could easily surpass the strikeout total for a Scherzer or a Verlander, depending on how long they go. But with Kershaw being an outspoken Christian, he is somebody I'm a fan of. So definitely pulling for him. And I'm left-handed. So, I like that.
And then the final guy that we agree is a first ballot Hall of Famer, and this is what actually made me talk about this on my podcast, was that Mad Dog Russo left off Zach Greinke for active Hall of Famers, and he just has an insane body of work. He won the Cy Young once. He finished second 2 or 3 other times. He's going to be in the 3,000 strikeout club this season. And the man just pitched innings for years. Like, he's just been really fantastic. I understand he's an aloof guy, but definitely a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, for me, he's in that slam dunk list too. He meets 2 secondary qualifiers already, 2,500 plus strikeouts, 200 plus wins. You mentioned hitting the 3,000 strikeout club this year. He's less than 100 away. He doesn't strike out a lot of guys these days, but I got my fingers crossed that he gets there this year or plays one more and gets there. It would be cool to see Greinke hit that milestone.
Now, definitely, this is where the list starts to get interesting. I think those 6 guys, at least for us, are slam dunk. If you're anti-Greinke, just pull up the Baseball Reference page. You probably just forgot how great he was.
Agree. And I'll lead us off here. I called the next tier in my list here, I called them on the doorstep or having met one of my qualifiers already. The first guy I have, which is at next number here, is Nolan Arenado. And the qualifier he's hit for me already is that he has 10 gold gloves and he's just 31 years old. I've got his Topps Chrome rookie here when he was still on the Rockies. Dom is showing his update rookie.
Yeah, great. I got this one in a 10.
Very nice. Very nice. And he's on pace to hit some of the other metrics. I know for me, he's likely to hit 400 home runs. He's likely to hit the 1,500 RBIs. So for me, he's well on his way. What do you think of Arenado, Dom?
Now that Albert Pujols is retired, he's probably my favorite active player. I actually have him 8 on my list behind Mookie Betts, because I just think the star power and the ability to be the second player in history to win the MVP in both leagues, with him being tied to the Dodgers for the next handful of years, it puts him ahead. But Nolan Arenado, whether you're looking analytically, award-wise, or just statistics, he's going to be one of the top 5 third basemen in all those categories. So he is definitely well on his way.
Yeah, I love Arenado. I've loved having him in fantasy baseball many a time as well.
I got him this year.
Yes, you do, in our league. But I've got one of the other third basemen on our list, but we'll get to him later. You briefly mentioned Mookie Betts, so I'm going to skip ahead to him because you kind of gave your thoughts on him there. He's actually in my next tier down, and it's because he's close to hitting a qualifier. He hasn't yet for me, but he's close. But he's got a ton of hardware. He's got a batting title. He's got an MVP. He's already got 6 gold gloves. He's got 5 silver sluggers. And he's just 30. He's got a good chance to hit the automatic qualifier of 1,800 runs, which is pretty crazy. There haven't been a lot of players to hit that threshold, so that's kind of unique. And there are several other he's on pace for, at least for the secondary qualifiers. So it wasn't hard for me to include him on my list. He's just not quite in this tier for me. But, Dom, you can go to your next guy on the list since I skipped down to Mookie Betts.
It's all good. Mookie Betts, he's just great all around. And while he's not putting up like the gaudiest of stats, like he's just, everyone knows that he's one of the best players in the game. Mm-hmm. And I think that matters. I think that's why I have him a spot over Arenado, is just like, even if Arenado has the better Baseball Reference page, people are going to remember Mookie Betts a little bit more. And the next guy is one that's fond to you, Mr. Freddie Freeman, who is just a statistics machine. That COVID MVP really helps him as well, I think, with the Hall of Fame. And he's just a guy that hits for a high average, drives in runs, does everything you want to do, decent defender. And I think he's going to qualify for at least 5 of my qualifiers.
Yeah, Dom had a Bowman Platinum rookie of Freeman there, and I'm showing a one of my like 5 or 6 Freddie Freeman autographs, a 2013 5-star. I'm not going to lie. Matt Olson's a good player. He's having a good season. I'm still bitter about Freddie going to the Dodgers, the evil empire of the National League. But maybe he'll come back at the end of his career and I can get over it. I do have Freddie also in the next tier down with Mookie Betts, but he has won that MVP. He's got over 300 homers, well on his way to 400, just under 2,000 hits right now. I know Dom likes his rule of 2,000. I think Freddie will get to 2,500 and beyond. He's got 1,100 runs already, so really good shot to get to 1,500. And he's also on pace for 1,500 RBI. So for me, he could crack 4 different secondary qualifiers, and that's without any of the additional hardware, just the counting stats stuff. So I love Freeman. I miss him. It was easy for me to put him on the list for sure. For sure.
No, definitely. We both lost stars to LA, so I feel you there.
We can commiserate there for sure.
But this other first baseman who wasn't being thought about as a Hall of Famer until last year is Paul Goldschmidt. I got him in my 10 slot. He is just sneaky good at everything, hitting for a high average, hitting for power, runs, the second most stolen bases by a first baseman in the 300 home run club. Like, he is just a really great player for a long time. And I know he didn't get Hall of Fame buzz until last season, but to me, he is well on his way. Just compile these next couple of years, and he already has a couple qualifiers. I think he'll get the couple more that he needs.
And what card are you showing there, Dom, for people on podcasts? What have you got?
Yeah, I should be saying it more, but the 2011 Topps update, Paul Goldschmidt, I got it at mint 9.
It's all right. You're a podcast rookie. It's fine. I was showing his first Bowman Chrome for Goldschmidt. Now, I've got him in the next tier down as well. It's funny. I've got the guys where I'm more counting stats a notch down, where you're more qualitative, they're a notch up. But Goldschmidt, just like you said, I mean, he hasn't been on a lot of Hall of Fame radars for a while and kind of burst onto that scene last year. He's only less than 75 homers from 400, which would be a qualifier for me. He did add that MVP. That helps a lot. But I do think he needs a strong back end of his 30s to clear some of those counting stats thresholds for me. But whereas as recently as a couple years ago, I pretty much had written him off, he's back knocking on the door in the conversation. So hopefully he can stay healthy. I would love to see him put together a for sure Hall of Fame resume here at the back end of his career.
No, definitely. I think that's kind of where me expanding the qualifiers allows for some of these guys that are clearly one of the best players in their era the ability to be recognized as such versus, hey, he didn't meet the qualifications of these all-time greats. That doesn't mean that he's not great for his era. So that's kind of where I am with Goldschmidt, along with this guy who I personally don't like him. I came around on him a lot. Manny Machado. He's just a fantastic hitter. You think he's going to get 3,000 hits. I don't think he will get there, but he's going to get enough qualifiers where I would vote for him on my ballot. Just a really sneaky good player. He lost out on a lot of gold gloves in his career and definitely on the Hall of Fame trajectory.
Yeah, we both showed his Topps rookie card. I'm going to beat the drum here a little bit on Machado because, I push him on you all the time. You came around on him some. But he's just under 300 home runs. He's right at 1,000 runs, right at 1,000 RBIs. He already has over 1,600 hits, and he's 30 years old. In my opinion, he's got the best shot outside of anybody named Mike Trout playing right now to get to 3,000 hits. If I had to put money on somebody other than Trout, it would be Machado, just because of that young start and the pace that he's on. He's got that long contract in San Diego, giving him an opportunity to hang around and do it. DH is now in the National League. By the time that he's in the latter stages of his career, that'll be there for him. I think he gets there, man. Machado, let's go on my fantasy team.
Yeah, that hasn't been too fun for you this year, has it?
It hasn't, but I'm optimistic for the second half. Optimistic. But
Now, the final guy that I have in this second tier of just keep up the great work, like they're well on their way, um, is a guy that we both like here. The Tops update, Bryce Harper. This is another guy where the expectations were so high, and he came into the era of Mike Trout, so he's been overshadowed a lot. But putting together a hell of a career, 2 MVPs, all the moments that you'd want to see, plays hard, and he's already reached many qualifiers of mine. He's on pace to meet many more. I just think that Bryce Harper is one of the more exciting players of his generation. So I got his rookie here, 2012 update in a BGS 9.5.
I do have Harper in this tier with you because he has those 2 MVPs, right? He's already hit one qualifier for me. He's well on his way for qualifiers and homers, hits, runs, RBIs to at least hit those secondary qualifiers. And I think has at least a decent shot at 500 home runs. So good chance for him to hit some of those big milestones. Now, this is episode 1. We're about to introduce a key segment that we're going to touch on hopefully every episode of Cracking Cooperstown. And Dom, what card did you show right there? Show the people one more time.
Oh, I showed his beautiful Tops update rookie.
Yes, Tops update rookie. And that you've got that graded Beckett 9.5?
Yes, sir.
Very cool. Well, I also have a Bryce Harper card I'm going to show. And ironically, it's also a Beckett Slab. It's a 2013 5-star Bryce Harper, graded 8.5. Now, for those of you that don't watch me on YouTube, I'm semi-famous for doing something in my collection that most people consider taboo. I especially do it for my vintage sets because I'm a big binder guy. But this show is called Cracking Cooperstown, both because we're cracking the code for guys to get to the Hall of Fame and how we collect them, but also because I'm known for cracking slabs. So this Bryce Harper is about to get cracked while we're on this show. So, Dom, you can talk about your thoughts about cracking slabs, about Bryce Harper, whatever you want, but I'm going to start breaking this bad boy.
If you could get some of that on camera, I think the people at home would really appreciate it for sure. But that is just something that I respect you for being so gung-ho about everything raw. But to me, if I can get a card for a price I'm happy with that's already in the slab, I'm not going to, basically, to me, cracking it out is throwing money away. Not that I'm looking to sell any of my cards, but I don't personally grade my own cards. I buy them already graded. Someone already put that money into the card. I'm not going to just throw that away for any good reason. Maybe if it's graded like a 1 or something and I want it displayed in a binder with a set, you could maybe convince me there to crack a slab, but I definitely wouldn't be cracking the card that you're currently cracking, especially with the taboo nature of it here. So it's something where Bryce Harper, really fun player. I'm sure that he would actually enjoy watching you crack his own slab open. He's just that kind of guy that's like very fiery and is competitive and just wants to see like true baseball be played. So someone that I really love to watch. His energy is electric. Even when he doesn't have an arm to throw with, he's hitting 450-foot blast. Like he's just really freaking awesome. There's the Beckett label right there. Jim Beckett, look away if you ever watch this.
Sorry, Dr. Yeah. Jim, I still love you.
He's over there cracking a future Hall of Fame autograph in front of our eyes, and it's just crazy to me.
Well, and you know why I do this? For those of you that don't know, I'm putting together the 2012 and 2013 5-star runs of all the Hall of Fame autographs. And I think Bryce Harper has reached the point of I feel confident enough to buy his autograph that he's going to be a future Hall of Famer. He has a 13. He also has a 12. His 12 is a rookie, so it's very expensive. But I couldn't pass on this one, especially with it being numbered to 30. And for those of you watching on YouTube, there's all the you know what this says right here, Dom? You know what this says? freedom, America. Okay, if you don't like cracking slabs, you don't like freedom. There's the Bryce Harper, still in the little plastic holder that Beckett puts them in, but I'll cut that out with a pair of scissors later. But cracking Cooperstown, baby, that's what we do.
Cracking Cooperstown, one in a slab, one no longer in a slab.
You're gonna have to hold up that end of the bargain.
I will try my best.
So
right. For those of you that we didn't just lose by dropping this on you 40 minutes in, we still have one last name in this section for me, and that's Jose Altuve. I actually think he has a better chance at 3,000 hits than Manny Machado. I don't think either of them get there. But Jose Altuve, 13 seasons, 46.5 WAR. He's got 3 batting titles. And I think the biggest advantage to Altuve, I don't know how the writers are going to react to his possible involvement in the trash can scandal, but he wasn't suspended for it, so he's not off my board. And second base is just a dry position at the Hall of Fame. Like, there's not a lot of second basemen that are that are good, that get considered. So Jose Altuve, I think, has a huge edge just from the position he plays, and he's going to hit multiple qualifiers of mine and be on that Hall of Fame path with tons of hits and a good batting average to go along with.
Mm-hmm. When I also have Altuve in this tier on my list, he does have those 3 batting titles. I think that means a lot. I'm going to have to probably make a bet with you that won't be decided for like a decade on Machado getting there and not Altuve for 3,000 hits. But we can talk about that after this podcast here.
I don't think either of them get there. If I just had to pick one, I would pick Altuve.
Well, I guess if Machado hits and Altuve doesn't, that'll be my win. But we'll see. But I do think it's so hard to know because we're a decade, 15, maybe 20 years away from seeing how the writers will hand the involvement, non-involvement in the whole Astros scandal. I'll mention it briefly here, we will see Beltran and how he's handled here in the next few years as the first guy that had any involvement with the Astros in that time period. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle him and then players on down the line that may be considered. But Altuve, nonetheless, for picking 40 right now, it was easy to put him on this list. I've got 3 more guys in this tier because I had some guys in the tier below this that you had. So we'll run through my 3, and then we'll probably be back on the same page together. Shane Bieber is the next guy that I have. Do you have a card for Bieber?
No, he is not even on my 40.
Oh, man, we have our first disagreement. Well, I'll make the case for him, and then you can make the case against him. But I'm showing his Topps rookie there. And the reason I've got him on the list, he's got a Cy Young, he's got a pitching Triple Crown. Now, that is still super early for him on the counting stats. It's super early. He's still fairly young. He's going to have to compile some serious numbers. Now, you could consider this a loophole in my metrics because, yeah, he hit a qualifier because of the pitching Triple Crown, and that's 1 season. But that's exactly why I have the secondary qualifiers and higher numbers for automatic, because I don't like the Peak Hall of Famer. That's not really my, flavor of ice cream, if you will. Now, because he does have a qualifier, he was above some other guys that you could make the argument that their Hall of Fame resume is stronger at this point or may be more likely to come to fruition. But I felt obligated, because he did hit a qualifier and many other players did not, to put him on my list. So, Dom, here's your first chance to play contrarian.
Hey, I don't think this is that contrarian, to be honest. I think this is a really weak Hall of Fame case. Especially, we talked about Freddie Freeman winning that MVP being huge, but it was in a 60-game season. And the 2 big stats you're talking about with Bieber, the Cy Young and the Triple Crown, happened during that 60-game season, where he won the pitching Triple Crown with 8 wins. It was a lot for that season,
yeah,
but it's not quite as impressive as a real pitching triple crown. It's a Mickey Mouse triple crown, if we're being honest. But he did that, and since that COVID season, his strikeout rate has gotten worse each following season. He has not been missing bats. He's still a very good pitcher at 28 years old, but that's the thing. He might get traded. He's been one of the big names in trade talks for if the Guardians sell, will Shane Bieber get moved? Maybe he goes to another organization and reinvents himself like Verlander did in Houston and gets himself on a real Hall of Fame trajectory. But right now, you look at the wins, you look at the strikeouts, and the way he's trending, I just don't see him as a legit Hall of Famer in terms of how I view pitchers. He could end up being a peak case, which, again, you don't like, but I don't see it.
Counter argument. So I have a master spreadsheet where I track tons of active players and their pace to hit my secondary qualifiers and my automatic qualifiers. Now, Shane Bieber, again, I agree that his last couple seasons haven't been great, but getting some of that hardware and the pace that he's on early in his career is still a positive, meaning he is currently 27 years old, okay, to be on pace for my secondary qualifiers, assuming that every player plays through age 40. Granted, I get it. Not everybody plays through age 40, but all-time greats tend to play in their late 30s or to that point, so that's just the cutoff that I use. He has 59 wins, okay? He would need to get to 70 by the end of this season, 11 more. He may or may not, to be on pace for that 200 wins still. As far as strikeouts, to get to 2,500, to be on that pace, he would need to be at 875 by the end of the season. He's already at 895. Okay, so he's ahead of pace on the strikeouts. To me, most likely, the wins, he's not going to get there. He's going to fall behind pace. And once you fall behind pace on wins, it is hard to catch up in the modern game. Agree. Strikeouts, however, are up in the modern game. Those can add up quickly. If anything, if Bieber becomes a Hall of Famer, he, in my opinion, he would have to get to that 2,500 Ks. Mickey Mouse or not, pitching Triple Crown and that Cy Young, that combination is what would have to get him into Cooperstown. Not my strongest candidate, but one of my 40 nonetheless.
I understand, based off your qualifications, why you think he's a possible future Hall of Famer. It's just the number he's at, he's trending, but you said strikeouts are trending up. Shane Bieber's strikeouts are trending down. Like, he is not missing bats anymore at the same clip. And like I said, maybe he goes to a contender at the trade deadline and starts winning more than 2 out of every 3 starts or whatever he's doing right now. He's 5-3. He just turned 28 on May 31st. Like, he's running out of that time, like you said, to like fall behind of the strikeout and win stuff that he needs to get. Maybe he ends up having a breakout season with the team he gets traded to and wins a Cy Young next year or something and puts himself in a different category. But right now, with the way he's trending, I don't see him winning any more hardware, and I don't see the strikeouts or wins impressing me enough to put him on my list.
Fair. Well, we don't want to eat up all our time on this podcast about Shane Bieber, but I'll put a bow on it of saying I do believe he needs a change of scenery. I do believe he needs to reverse the trends. However, the early start, in terms of we're trying to put 40 players on a list for right now, he deserves to be on the list. That's all I'm saying. But let's move on to the next guy I've got in the section. Maybe this guy will be on your list, but it is probably the most polarizing position in terms of Hall of Fame candidacy, if not the second most. I'm about to reach a pair of closers. I'm just going to do them both at the same time.
A pair?
A pair of closers on my list. Kenley Jansen and Craig Kimbrell. Okay? They're both over 400 saves, which is a secondary qualifier for me. Now, I do think that both of them only have a real Hall of Fame shot if they reach that 500 plus level in saves for my automatic qualifier. Now, Jansen's 35 and Kimbrel's 1 year younger. So far this year, Jansen is having a better season. I think that's fair to say. But Kimbrel, as of late, has started pitching better and picking up some saves for the Phillies. So he may not be done yet at age 34. What say you, Dominic Manna?
Jansen is, because I'm very confident in my top 30 of being real possible, not first ballot Hall of Famers, but Hall of Fame candidates. Kimbrel's in my last 10 where I'm reaching, and it's sad because I actually collected a lot of Craig Kimbrel, and I got this second year Rookie Cup Heritage card autographed. If you asked me 3 years ago when you made your first list, he would have been way higher, like super confident. He was faster than Mariano Rivera to 200 and 300 career saves. He limped his way to 400. I saw it. He was playing for my favorite team in Boston. The team didn't trust him to get the final out of the World Series. They gave it to Chris Sale, and he just got screwed in the contract and spring training situation, went to the Cubs, was traded to the White Sox, and he just hasn't been getting the save opportunities that he was getting before. And his swing and miss rate, much like Shane Bieber, has went down. Like, he's not getting the same amount of strikeouts as he was during his prime. So I just don't think he has any shot at 500, meaning he has very little shot at the Hall. Billy Wagner is trending to get into the Hall of Fame with less than 500 career saves. So that's why Kimbrel still made my list as like a prime closer. He had like a really good strikeout rate during his prime, but I don't think he's a great case anymore. Jansen is higher on my list because he's actually been good the last 3 years. And I think that if he stays healthy, he can push for 500, making him a safer case than Kimbrel. If one reliever from this era gets in, it'll be Jansen.
Jansen currently has 405 saves. Kimbrel has 403. Wagner, for his career, had 422. So there is, I think, a pretty good chance that both Jansen and Kimbrel will pass Wagner in terms of saves. Because for both of us, in terms of other qualifiers outside of that save number, Jansen and Kimbrel aren't hitting any of them. So it's solely based on how many saves can they rack up to where voters can't ignore them anymore. Now, I'm an optimist at heart, so I think they're both on pace. I'm just going to say that they both make 500 saves, and I look like a genius on this list. But, you know, Dom feels differently, but that's why we're on here together. So we can move on down to the next tier. You've already taken a few of mine from this tier. I've only got one left. How many of you got in the next tier down, Dom?
Oh, the next tier has one player who's in a tier of his own for me.
Let's push him for just a second. We'll go to him next. Okay? Because that's going to be a good discussion. But before we get to him, let's touch on my last player in the ones knocking on the door of reaching a qualifier. And it's Garrett Cole. He's less than 65 wins from 200. He's already cracked 2,000 strikeouts, and he's 32. He's outside of the locks at the top as far as pitchers go, but after the lock guys, to me, this is the pitcher in terms of Hall of Fame resume outside of those top lock guys.
Yeah, I have Cole on my list. He's just lower. I think he is really a 3,000 strikeout case candidate. He's someone that doesn't have like the hardware. It hasn't been good in the postseason for the most part. And he's just someone that I don't feel like, kind of like Zach Greinke, isn't super likable. So if he's able to play long enough and be around 200 wins and push for 3,000 strikeouts, I think he has a pretty good chance of being in the Hall of Fame. It's just really tough after we talk about those slam dunk pitchers for who are going to be those next pitchers that make the Hall of Fame. Is the Hall of Fame going to have to look at starting pitchers differently with nobody getting close to 300 wins and the balls flying out of the park and how it's harder to be in this run scoring environment? Like, Cole is someone that I have on my list. I need to get some cards of him, even though he's a a Yankee, but it's something where 3,000 strikeouts to me is like his whole Hall of Fame case. Otherwise, he's just borderline.
Well, to your point of how the writers, probably how they view pitchers in this era may likely shift. How many other pitchers can you name right now that you are confident in saying they're going to get 200 wins and 2,500 Ks? Because while Greinke has the Cy Young, that's what I'm talking about for Garrett Cole. I mean, 65 wins, less than 65 wins away from 200, and already over 2,000. I mean, he's had 300 strikeouts in a season recently. He's been over 200 every year for several years. I mean, he could get that 2,500 threshold in the rest of this season and maybe two more. Could only be 30-ish wins, 35-ish wins away from that 200 threshold at that point, and he would be 34, 35. So as far as a projection, a crystal ball, if you will, I think he's right there, knocking on what'll be potentially the top end of the next generation of pitchers past those, Scherzers, the Verlanders, the Kershaws, the Greinke's.
I agree with you there. He's technically my next highest pitcher, but he's just lower in my top 30.
And to be fair, I like him better than Shane Bieber. How about that?
You should.
Okay, well, take it away with the next guy, because you brought it to my attention we really drilled down on this one about a month ago. We had a very lengthy conversation about this player. So I'll let you have the floor first.
This player is truly special. And to me, I brought down my qualification numbers so players that have a decade of dominance can be honored. And we are blessed to be able to watch this man, Shohei Ohtani. Like, he is truly a unicorn. I have his top Series 2 rookie card in a PSA 10 pitching.
This is my best Ohtani, this rookie debut card. I need to get what you've got.
He is so special. He is top 3 in the league right now in home runs and strikeouts. So he is a top-of-the-line starter and a top-of-the-line slugger. He's won an MVP. I think he has a very good chance of winning another MVP and or Cy Young. And I brought down my qualifiers for him because he came over at an older age and is playing both ways. I gave him a little leeway. I think that's fair. He's that unique of a case. So I took down his qualifications just 25%. So right now he has 581 hits. I think he can get to 1,500 career hits. Home runs, he's got 138. I think he can get to 225. RBIs, 374. I think he can get to 750. Runs, 353. I think he can get to 750. And if he's able to, like I said, add the Cy Youngs, MVPs, if this offseason, whoever wins the sweepstakes, he goes and wins championships and ALCS and World Series MVPs, he's going to be a Koufax level peak candidate that can't be ignored by the Hall of Fame, even if he only does it for a 7 to 8 year stretch of prime Shohei. That's still 2 Hall of Fame careers in one.
In terms of the metrics that I normally have for secondary qualifiers and automatic qualifiers, he's actually on pace to potentially hit 400 home runs, which is bonkers in terms of how long he's been in the league so far. But the question that you asked me, because you know how big I am on the milestones and all of that, the question you asked me about a month ago was, what if instead of 2, it was 4? And what if for those 4, he hit half of what your numbers were? So example, if it was 400 home runs, if he hits 200, okay? If the number is 200 wins and he also has 100 wins, but he's got to do that across 4, okay? You said, would he be a Hall of Famer in your eyes? I said yes. Because if he does what he's doing at the pace that he's doing it at for the next 3 to 5 years, he's going to be the most unique Hall of Fame case ever. And if he hits those 4 secondary qualifiers at half the mark that I have, I don't think there's any way you can't put him in.
First ballot.
For first ballot to me is a whole thing, and it's overrated, but very likely. I mean, he's a freak. I mean, there's no other way to put it. So Ohtani is, if you're not watching Ohtani on TV, you need to. Okay, you may not ever see anything like him ever again. So I hope that he does it. I hope that we get to have this conversation in 3 to 5 years of like, he's done exactly what we're talking about. You know, the man's a future Hall of Famer. So he's a fun one to discuss. Now the next tier down, I called my tier purely speculation. And the first one I have in purely speculation is Giancarlo Stanton. At the time of when I wrote this, I updated my statistics on my personal Hall of Fame spreadsheet yesterday. He's 33 years old, and he's 118 homers away from 500. His question is, can he stay healthy long enough to get there? Because I think the only way that Stanton's going to be a Hall of Famer is if he hits that magic 500, and it's all question of health. The dude's got unreal power, and a great ballpark to hit home runs in at Yankee Stadium where he plays right now. It's just, can he stay on the field long enough to do it? Do you have him on your list, Dom?
I do. He's another guy that's really about one stat, which is the home runs. Like you said, I have his update rookie to 10. And the ball just sounds different off his bat. Like, even when he was playing in Miami, I was super impressed by Stanton. I was upset when Derek Jeter traded him to the Yankees for a bag of potato chips because of his terrible contract. But like you said, it's the health. Like, his first couple seasons in New York, he was relatively healthy, put up the normal power stats that you'd want to see, but he's been very banged up. And to me, with me doing the 4 qualifiers at lower levels, he's right there, and that MVP in his back pocket doesn't hurt. But he's really pushing for that 500 home run number. I think if you're looking at 40 active guys for the Hall of Fame, you can't leave Stanton off the list.
He's definitely one of those guys, though, we've talked about he's gonna need that magic number. You know, barring miracle multiple MVPs or something like that, he's gonna need that 500, magic.
For a strong case, yes, but I still think that if he can compile enough the rest of his career, that he'll still be a good Hall of Fame candidate and buy.
I mean, he's got 1,397 hits right now. Again, as of this recording, he's got an outside chance at 1,500 RBIs. He's at 982, which that's not, a milestone that's talked about a lot, but it's more exclusive than you think. Go take a look on it at Baseball Reference, one of my favorite websites in the whole world. Again, if he stays healthy, if he hits those 118 home runs, just those, if they were all solo shots, we're talking 1,100 RBIs. So not outside the realm of possibility he could get to 1,500. So we'll see. Stanton's deserving to be on the list for sure. Who's next on your list, Dom? Let's roll it back to you.
Well, you actually skipped a couple of guys on my list. I had a tier of 2 for did they do enough, and I don't have cards of these guys because I'm not sure if they did enough. So paying for them is weird, but Joey Votto and Andrew McCutchen, 2 guys in the NL Central, 16th season and 15th season respectively. Votto's an analytical darling. Like, he broke the rule of 2,000. He has over 300 home runs, over 1,000 RBIs and runs. So all of that, he's a Hall of Famer in my book. I would vote for Joey Votto, but I don't know if the writers will get behind the Joey Votto case for the Hall of Fame. And Andrew McCutchen, he just broke the rule of 2,000 with the Pirates. 300 home runs is right on the horizon. He's a 1,000-run, 1,000 RBI player. He, during his prime in Pittsburgh, when he won that MVP, which I think will help him in the Hall of Fame discussion, he was a top 3 player in the National League for a 4-year stretch at center field, which is a tough defensive position. I mean, did he do enough to get into the Hall of Fame? I'm not sure, but he's someone that, if I'm talking about Hall of Famers right now, I have to put Votto and McCutcheon's body of work ahead of the guys that were looking to chase one stat like a Stanton or even a Garrett Cole, because their job's not finished yet, and these guys are pretty much at the end.
I do have both of them on my list. They are lower for me because I just think they're going to run out of gas before they get to the finish line. Now, that being said, Votto has not played so far this year. He is 58 home runs away from 400, which would be one of my qualifiers. I'm not a qualitative guy. I'm not a sabermetrics guy. He does have over 2,000 hits, but he's 407 away from 2,500. I just don't think he's going to play long enough to hit either of those. However, he's on my list because I think that the turnover, as more and more modern writers have Hall of Fame votes that they can cast, he is an analytical darling. The on base and a lot of his quantitative sabermetric type stats, he will have a backing. I think that he's an era committee candidate. I'm not sure that he'll get in on the writers ballot, but I do think he's an eventual likely Hall of Famer via the era committee. Now,
yeah, and that,
go ahead.
I was going to say that's part of our discussion that we didn't really talk about. 40 Hall of Famers doesn't mean that all these guys are going to get in by the writers, have a lot of Hall of Fame steam. It's just guys that are going to get into the Hall of Fame one way or the other. It could be first ballot through the writers. It could be 20 years from now in an era committee.
Right.
The possibilities are endless. It just did they do enough or project to do enough where we think we would check a box for them?
Right. No, good point. Thanks for adding that in there. And in terms of what I think on McCutcheon, since they're kind of tiered there together for you, it's interesting where a couple of our milestones here will really make a difference because for me, McCutcheon, he just cracked 2,000. My threshold is 2,500. He has 1,149 runs. My threshold is 1,500. He's 36 years old. Okay. If that guy hangs on and is somewhat productive here for like 4 more seasons, he might squeeze that out to go with an MVP. He could hit one of them, right? And maybe he gets there, especially on the runs is probably more likely. That being said, for you, Dom, the interesting stat that I think makes a difference for you, and I'm sorry if you mentioned it, but he currently has 295 home runs. Okay. Pretty confident McCutcheon's going to hit 5 more, and then he gets to that 300 for you. So if your threshold or anybody listening's threshold for home runs being like a significant number for you, if that 300 is more where you're at, that makes a difference. And because of that, again, I think he's an era committee potential candidate. That's why he's on my list. Where he's just so close, but just isn't quite over the threshold numbers, the milestone numbers for me. The body of work being so close in many areas, I think might push him over the top.
Yeah, I think that's fair on both of them. They're gonna be at least Hall of Very Good, the two of those guys.
Agree.
So.
Agree. Let's see. I'm going to skip over a couple guys that I have in this tour to go down to a little more of a veteran player. Hopefully this guy, it won't sting too much for you, Dom. But let's talk Xander Bogaerts. I know it's fresh. I know you're probably still upset about him going to San Diego as a diehard Red Sox fan, but I do think he's deserving to be on this list. In my opinion, he's got an outside shot at 3,000 hits. Again, outside, but he is at 1,468 at age 30. Almost halfway there with potentially a decade more to go on that contract. He's also on pace for secondary qualifiers of RBIs and runs, which he has 704 and 787 respectively. And again, that long contract that Boston wasn't willing to give him, that San Diego did with so many years, DH in the National League. I mean, he's having another good year. He might hang around long enough to hit some of those milestone numbers.
So I told you I'm confident in my top 30.
Mm.
He's my number 31.
Mm.
And it is something where, like, I definitely can see him compiling enough, even though I think he will continue to not age the best, um, to be a borderline baseball writers guy, but more likely a veterans committee guy. He's someone that kind of flies under the radar a lot, even when he was playing in a big market like Boston. He's just been a very solid player for a long time, below average defender, guy that hits for average, doesn't have a ton of power. He just gets it done. He's a professional hitter, and he's someone that I think you have to have in your top 40, but I'm just not quite as confident as you that he's already there. It's more of a, do you project he'll compile enough during this long contract that he signed?
Only 1,000 hits away from 2,500 as a secondary qualifier too. I mean, I talked about the 3,000, but
Yeah.
that's shooting for the magic number. That secondary number, I mean, that's pretty realistic. 1,000 hits over the next decade plus, 100 a year. And I think he's going to do better than that on the front end. We're also mid-season 2023. So I like him. I like the early pace. Has flown under the radar as a good player for a long time in Boston. So, like so many guys that ultimately wind up in the Hall of Fame, when you have early success and have pretty big numbers at an early age, that just adds so much to the possibilities of your pace when we're talking Hall of Fame resume.
Yeah, and I miss him. I showed his 14 rookie that I have in a 10, but I would love to see him get into the Hall of Fame one day. Maybe it's still like the emotions that are fresh, why he didn't get into like my confident tier, but I think that if you have to make it 40, he has to be on your list, even if you're not as confident as you are.
And I don't have any Bogarts, but maybe I should as much confidence as I put in them. But who you got next, Dom? Who you got?
The next guy, talking about my Red Sox fandom, I got Aaron Judge. And he's also in that tier of health and going for one milestone. I don't think he needs to get 500 home runs to make the Hall of Fame. I think being the Yankee captain, the 62 home run season, he can do just enough of everything and get there. But 8 seasons, 38.8 WAR, I think he's going to get to be a 60 WAR guy, which automatically puts you on the radar for those new school Hall of Fame voters that you're talking about that are analytically minded. I think he's going to easily get my qualifiers for home runs at 300 and runs and RBIs at 1,000 apiece. He's got one MVP already, got a Rookie of the Year. I hate that he's in my division. The 24 hours that he was a San Francisco Giant were a very happy one in this household, but he's definitely a guy that you look at him and you're like, yeah, he's probably going to be in the Hall of Fame someday.
Aaron Judge. I had a vehement argument with our good friend, the Drew, a Vintage Legacy on YouTube about Aaron Judge. His whole argument, though, why I got so upset about it, was he said, the Yankee pinstripes, man, the 62 homer season, he's a Hall of Famer. And I'm like, dude, he can't be a Hall of Famer just on that. And he's like, come on, you don't think he's going to be a Hall of Famer? I've got Judge on my list of 40. Okay, I don't think I could justify not. But this is what I wrote about him. He's got 230 plus home runs. He does have that 62 home run season. He does have an MVP. The pinstripes, like it or not, it doesn't hurt. Okay. He's a long shot, but if he gets to 400 plus home runs, which is in the realm of possibility, even though he got started late and all of that, that's why I'm very anti Aaron Judge, is he got started at such a late age for a rookie in terms of Hall of Fame candidacy. If he does that and happens to add any more serious hardware, I may not agree with it, but he could be a Hall of Famer. Now, someone that I had in the tier that we're talking about, because I have Aaron Judge in my like throwing darts category, just because I'm just not.
It's a pretty big dart.
He's a big dart. But I'm not big on him. Someone who I like better, who did get started a little bit younger, and who I like better in terms of pace, Francisco Lindor. Now, I don't have any of his cards to show, but I believe between hits or runs or RBIs or home runs that he's at least going to hit two of the secondary qualifiers, because when you look at his numbers now, he's got 196 home runs. Okay, he's about halfway to that 400. He's got 1,225 hits, about halfway to 2,500. He's got 624 RBIs, a little bit less than halfway to 1,500. 716 runs, right at halfway. And not like crazy hardware that jumps out at you, but if he adds, a few more here, there, chips away, he's got 2 Gold Gloves, he's got 2 Silver Sluggers, 4 All-Star appearances. I like his pace. I felt like I had to include him on this list because he got an earlier start than someone like a Judge. He's just going to have a little more time, a little more length on the back end of his career to try and compile some of that.
Yeah, I got Lindor and his former teammate Jose Ramirez back to back in the same tier with Judge and Stanton. They're both around 40 win players, about a decade into the league. Their rookie cards are both under $100 and a 10. And I think they're just guys, when you look at their body of work at the end of the day, you're going to be like, wow, they were really good for a long time, one of the best at their position, one of the best in their era. They're not the big names that we've talked about before, but they're guys that have been stars. I think will continue to be stars for at least another 4 or 5 years. And they're just really good players that, when you look at that, if you're a really good player for over a decade, you're going to get Hall of Fame consideration. And that's really what it is with those 2 former Cleveland guys. And Jose Ramirez, I mean, everyone's been calling him the most undervalued or underappreciated player in baseball for half decade plus. He's eventually going to get, whether it's an MVP or a Hall of Fame nod, he's going to get credit somewhere by the baseball writers.
I also have Ramirez literally right next to Lindor for the exact same reasons. Exactly.
They're very similar.
Yeah, very similar potential pathway to the Hall of Fame. Very similar. Now, I have more in this category, my purely speculation, but I think they're a separate tier for you. I've got a leadoff right here because this is a leadoff hitter. This is one of my guys. I hope I don't jinx myself. Future 2023 MVP in the National League, Ronald Acuna Jr. Now, talk about a player that got a great start at a young age in his career. And don't get me wrong, it is super early. And I hate calling people future Hall of Famers. Like, I think that term is so overused. But for the purpose of this exercise, we're picking 40 players, right? So for Acuna, he's on pace, just on pace. It's early again, but he's on pace to crack the 500 home run club, the 3,000 hit club, the 1,800 run club. Those are 3 automatic qualifiers. He's also on pace for 1,500 RBI and 500 stolen bases. 2 more secondary qualifiers there. That's not to say anything about any hardware he may pick up along the way in terms of Silver Sluggers or Gold Glove or MVPs or All-Star appearances. Not even Trout is on the pace to crack those major milestones and secondary qualifiers because he's just not running anymore. Acuna is still 25 years old, and with the new stolen base rule, he could be a true generational player and one of the only ones to have that combination of those milestones. I mean, again, he's a Brave. I get excited about it, but Acuna has to be, in terms of the young guys, one of the most exciting Hall of Fame candidacies to talk about. Do you agree, Dom?
He's exciting. He's in my top 30. I have some guys with a little bit more of a body of work ahead of him because I looked at it as where I would vote for them today.
Fair.
But I didn't put a single guy on my list that isn't at least currently in their 5th major league season. To me, like, less than that is more than a dart throw. It's a Hail Mary. But I think there's a clear tier of the three guys that are young and just have the ability to meet my qualifiers. Acuna's in that, Vladdy Guerrero Jr. is in that, and this man Juan Soto is in that. I think all three of them are doing pretty dang well. And like you said, not everybody that gets into the Hall of Fame is going to be at the end of their careers. A lot of these guys are going to be at the very beginning of their careers. I'm sure there's some guys that are less than 5 years service time that are going to be Hall of Famers one day and knock off some of these names that we both listed. But those three guys, it's fantastic. I'm glad that your team has a guy like that. It's really exciting to watch him play.
And we showed Soto's update rookie there. I also showed Acuna's Topps Chrome rookie. So, that says a lot for two guys that their collections really lean Hall of Fame. For us to already have those guys as young as they are as Hall of Fame speculation candidates. I also have Vladdy Guerrero Jr. on my list for the same reason. So moving down from those, trio of three exciting players, who do you have next, Dom?
I would have grouped him in with Lindor and Ramirez because I think he's a very similar player, just a little bit less compiled so far. That's Trey Turner, now the Philadelphia Phillies shortstop, former Washington National. 9th season, speedy, just a guy that it can really do it all. And I think that contract he got with Philadelphia, he's going to be able to compile the numbers to be a Lindor-like candidate with speed that Lindor just doesn't have. So Turner is someone that I wanted to just bring up quickly, but we can move on from him. I don't think he's a super interesting case. He's kind of just getting to 40. You feel pretty good about it.
1 point on Turner really quick.
Yeah.
He's already over halfway to that 500 number of stolen bases. And speed doesn't age well, but he is also over 1,000 hits already. He's 29. He's going to need to have that speed component hang around a little bit longer. But I like speed guys too. So Turner's on my list. But you can continue. I just wanted to add that.
No, it's all good. The next two guys that I have on my list are very different. One of them is kind of looked at as over the hill, and one is looked at as just getting started. But Anthony Rizzo, man, 13th season, 41 career WAR. He's Freddie Freeman light, but with a better glove. Like, he's a very good defensive first baseman. He's playing in the bandbox that is Yankee Stadium to help him get to the qualifiers that I personally have. And I think that even though he doesn't have like the individual hardware, that Cubs championship is going to loom large. Like, that's a very significant championship in the fact that there's no like obvious Hall of Famers on that team. Like, I feel like there has to be someone in the Hall of Fame from that team, and Rizzo is by far the best bet.
In terms of narrative, not to the same degree of like the Brooklyn Dodger magic that helped like a Gil Hodges get in, who may end up needing more help than an Anthony Rizzo. I think Rizzo, with that Cubs championship, will have some of that narrative going for him, which will help. He's going to crack 300 homers this season. He's got a good shot to get to 400, especially if he sticks around in Yankee Stadium. And he's got an outside shot at 2,500 hits and the 1,500 RBI thresholds. It's a big ask, but not impossible. He's a sneaky candidate that people don't really talk about that is closer than most people think. So he's going to be a fun one to watch here in the next 2-3 years to see if he continues to trend that way.
Yeah, and he's in that 2011 rookie class for cards. Like, you're looking at Goldschmidt and Trout and Altuve, and people don't buy Rizzo. And I think people are going to regret it in a decade or so that they didn't buy Rizzo when they could.
Says the two guys that didn't show a Rizzo card.
Hey, I have it in my eBay watch list, but
he's got a 2012 and a 2013 5-star, so I better get on that.
Yeah, vintage is king with my collecting budget, but I have plenty of modern as well. Same. The other guy, I have my homer moment now. Rafael Devers rookie card in a PSA 10. I love this card with the Gold Cup. 7th season. He's only got 16.5 WAR because he's not a good defender. He's just a great player. His 162 game average, 281 average, 339 on base, 513 slug line, averaging 34 home runs and 110 RBIs a year, and he's 26 years old. I've seen a lot of great hitters in my lifetime. I think he's one of the best hitters, young hitters that I've ever seen. And he is he's literally right above that tier of Soto, Acuna, and Guerrero Jr. for me, just because he has a little bit more in the tank. But man, he is special to watch, and I thanked the stars when my Red Sox announced the extension. I did not think that was going to happen, and having that kind of guy in your uniform, you feel really good.
Couldn't agree with you more. It's early to project, however, he's on pace for 500 homers, 3,000 hits, 1,800 runs, 1,800 RBIs. It's early. He's got to keep a ridiculous pace for a long time, but it's within the realm of possibility, and you can't exactly say that for every player. Devers is very deserving to be on this list of 40. So
no, definitely. He's having a bad first half in a lot of people's eyes, and he has 52 RBIs already.
He's been a little disappointing on my fantasy team. I have him on one of my two. But I've got a lot of faith in Devers to turn it around, as I know you do as well. But I guess we're bouncing from your team to my team because it's my time to champion one of my dart throws. Okay? I'm going to use Dom's own words here. Second base in terms of the Hall of Fame is very light and lacking. Well, we're going to talk about a second baseman right here. I'm going to make the case. Dom's going to play contrarian again. All right? It's another Brave, but it's Ozzie Albies. I'm showing his Topps Chrome rookie here on the screen for those of you checking it out on YouTube. Ozzie Albies is still just 26. He's on pace to hit some of the secondary qualifying numbers that I mentioned. Now, we're in the point of my list where I'm getting into my dart throws, like I mentioned. But Ozzie is currently on pace at age 26, especially at second base, mind you. He has 112 home runs, on pace to potentially hit 400, 737 hits, on potentially a pace to hit 2,500, 388 RBIs, outside shot to hit 1,500, but on pace, and 430 runs, almost a third of the way there to 1,500 runs. He also does have 2 All-Stars, it is worth noting, at a weaker position in second base. So if he sticks there, and 1 Silver Slugger too, if he sticks there at second base, decent chance to add some of those hardware qualitative type things as well. Now, he's very young, again, projecting for him to have a long, successful career. But on the back end of my 40, at a weaker position, your words, Dom, I felt like he was deserving to be on the list.
I give you credit. In terms of my qualifiers, he is on pace. So he is someone that I think is an A0 in the Hall of Fame category. But your Braves have done, I think, too good of a job at team building to the point where Ozzie Albies is just not going to be looked at that way. Like, I just think you look at, he's had some injury problems already in his career, and Ronald Acuna is the face of that team.
Oh, no doubt.
Austin Riley and Matt Olson are going to put up way better offensive numbers. Like, he's just going to be so far down the totem pole on that team, whether it's for All-Star consideration or MVP consideration and then Hall of Fame consideration. He's a just miss for me, but I think that you, with your homerism and the fact that he's projecting for your loftier qualifiers, I'm okay with you having him on the list, even if I don't quite get there.
Okay, I only have one rebuttal to that. I think it's going to be much harder for Matt Olson and Austin Riley to garner all-star appearances at their respective positions. They have more competition, than Albies currently has at second base. Now,
There's a guy on my list that actually
We're gonna
is going to be a problem for him.
we're gonna get to him, and yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not happy that he came to the National League because it puts a damper on what I just said. But like I said, even then, is there not? I'm not gonna say his name yet, but is there anybody else in the National League at second base that you think is gonna get an All-Star nod outside of these two?
There's a few guys that could.
Ooh, I don't know if I agree with that, but we'll keep going. I don't want to get us too sidetracked. Ozzy Albies, future Hall of Famer.
That's fair. And since you're talking about a guy that's only on your list, I'm going to take a guy that you took off your list and I have on mine, and that is Jacob deGrom. Update rookie in a mid-9. Should have bought this after the injury, but I didn't pay a lot for it.
Should have.
Jacob deGrom, he is chasing one milestone. He is chasing that third Cy Young. He got a longer than expected deal with Texas. He is signed there for the next 3 seasons after he rehabs next year. And that team is good. They have a core that's locked up, good players, giving him the opportunity when he's healthy to get enough wins and strikeouts where he could be a Cy Young candidate. And him going from 2 Cy Youngs to 3 Cy Youngs takes him out of that bucket with Brett Saberhagen, Tim Lincecum, and Johan Santana, and puts him closer to the peak guys like Sandy Koufax that we see that have the 3 Cy Youngs. So I think if that one Cy Young can really change his narrative, the injuries and him starting off as a shortstop, he's not going to get the cumulative stats needed to be one of those all-time pitchers, but 3 Cy Youngs is 3 Cy Youngs, and I think if you have that many, they're not going to keep you out of Cooperstown forever.
I agree with everything you said as far as what it's going to take for deGrom. And granted, he hits one of my secondary qualifiers with those 2 Cy Youngs. He's the only player that hits at least one of my qualifiers that I left off this list that's currently in the game. He's the only one. And this is why. I had deGrom on my list in the time frame where we started talking about actually doing this podcast, and from the time we recorded it, he got hurt. Okay. And the timing of this injury for me is really what changed my mind of him being able to do this. There's a possibility that he could come back in the middle of 2024, but it's not outside the realm of possibility either that he might not return until 2025. Okay. And this late in the game, in his 30s, where he's got to have that third Cy Young, he's got to have that hardware. Is he going to come back and dominate and get it? Or is he just going to come back and finish out that contract? In baseball, you've said this several times, Tom, especially off air when we've been talking. Baseball is better when deGrom is pitching and he's good in today's game. I totally agree. And I don't wish anything bad against him. But if I was going to wager on it, I just don't think he's going to come back and win that last Cy Young to put him over the top. I mean, it's hard to do for anybody, but especially for somebody this late in their 30s. I mean, if he does it, there you go. He was the kind of quality type of pitcher that he earned that. He got that third Cy Young, put him in the Hall, but that's hard to do. That's a rare thing. So I just happen to be on the flip side of the coin of this one.
Yeah, the optimist is negative on one of the best pitchers we've ever seen.
I know. Well, I'm also anti peak, so it makes it a little easier.
That's fine. The last guy that I have in my top 30 that hasn't been named yet, he's another guy that is chasing one qualifier, and that is Pete Alonso, another Met. That's his rookie card from Series 2, I believe. The Mets, there's a famous rant from Don LaGreca, who was on the Michael Kay show, talking about who is the career Met. Like the guy that started his career, finished his career, is like a all-time Met. And people either didn't start with the Mets or left the Mets after. And Ed Kranepool was the topic of the rant. If you haven't heard it, I'd strongly recommend it. It is super funny. Pete Alonso doesn't just have a really good pace for 500 home runs, which would be an automatic qualifier for both of us, but I think he has a realistic chance of being that all-time Met, the guy that plays his whole career in New York. The fans love him. He's in all the commercials. I think he is a guy that is more durable than Aaron Judge, but has the same kind of aura on his team as like the big slugger that everybody loves in New York. So Pete Alonso, I'm pretty confident that if he continues this pace, that he's going to be a future Hall of Famer.
I'm surprised you're as confident as you are in Alonso in doing that, but I can see where you think the narrative's going to help him. Now I'm a Braves fan, so Mets are going to Met, bro. He's going to screw that up, and he's not going to make it, even though he's on my list of 40. But Mets are going to Met. I'm not going to beat Pete Alonso, his resume to death. He's got a chance at 500 homers if he keeps up a really good pace. Not impossible, within the realm of possibility. But I'm going to end the Alonso discussion with throw it again. For all you Braves fans out there, you'll know what I'm talking about.
That home run was far.
It was far, but throw it again. We swept.
And that's what I said. He's a home run case for the Hall of Fame. He can continue to hit those. He might not be not a Hall of Fame trash talker, but he could be a Hall of Fame slugger.
Could be.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with a guy next that I'm pretty sure is not on your list. I'm like 99.9% sure. And I don't even love the guy, but he's gonna crack 100 home runs this year at the age of 24. I'm in the section of throwing darts in my list. Fernando Tatis Jr. He's got the PED suspension.
That's why I got my board.
Rules. That's gonna matter probably, at least for some voters. So hard to know 15 to 20 years from now how that's going to be handled. But he got started young. He's on a good pace. He's on a good team. He's got a long contract. He's 24. I put him on the list. Dom, go ahead.
I love watching him play. He is electric. I was so upset when he got suspended for PEDs because I knew that destroyed his Hall of Fame chances. I thought he was going to be one of those like what ifs, like a guy that's constantly hurt but like was amazingly talented. But instead the what if is what if he had a brain? You know, like it's just a big shame. He would definitely be on my list if he didn't have the PED suspension. Another Padre, Nelson Cruz, who you think is gonna maybe get 500 home runs and ipso facto get into the Hall of Fame. He's another guy that I won't even touch with a 10-foot pole for the Hall of Fame because the PEDs. But Tatis, amazing player, not a Hall of Famer because of the suspension.
I'm off the Cruz train now. He's ran out of gas. He's finally ran out of gas. He's probably actually like 48, but Cruz has ran out of gas at this point. All right, you go with one of your late list candidates here.
I got these two veterans. One of them people don't even know is still active, and the other one is almost on the level of a McCutchen Votto, but he fell off a lot faster. And those two names are Cole Hamels, who, yes, is still active. 15th season, 59 career WAR, so right near that 60 number. He was great in the postseason, fell short of 3,000 strikeouts, but he did hit your 2,500 strikeout number. I don't think he's going to do that, but he could be an era committee guy. As, like you said, we look at the generation of pitchers and they're not compiling the stats, and this is the other thing. Cole Hamels did that in Philadelphia, was dominant. I think he has a chance of being an era committee guy. And Evan Longoria, 16th season, 58.7 career WAR, which is higher than I thought because he did fall off after about 5 years in the league. But talking about narratives, he is one of the first players you think of when you think of the Tampa Bay Rays. And I think that matters. It's a newer franchise, and he's someone that's just been very good. 340 home runs, over 1,000 RBIs, and 1,000 runs scored. To me, his Hall of Fame case really just matters. He's having a resurgence this year with Arizona. If he can just play the rest of this year healthy and the majority of next year healthy and get over the rule of 2,000, he's currently at 1907. I think he'd be a really sneaky era committee guy going from Hall of Very Good to maybe Hall of Famer.
as far as Hamels go, he does reach that secondary qualifier for me for 2,500. And had he not had the weird injury type deal cut, signed, whatever, those last couple seasons when he was actually talked about, he signed with the Braves at one point. Spring training invites just didn't stick with a couple different teams there. He may have gotten to 200 wins. He was 37 away. Technically, he's still active. I do think he's a possible era candidate because of how I think pitching is going to be viewed a little bit differently here in the next decade or so. I'm with you there. For Evan Longoria, I think the Rays, franchise type player narrative, I don't think it's going to play as well. I think if you're a Longoria guy, which you are a bigger Hall guy, your thresholds are a little bit lower than mine. You have to be if you think Evan Longoria is a Hall of Famer. Because if you're any stricter at all, he just doesn't cut it. He's not going to make it. He's 37 years old. Like you said, he would have to play this year and next year and still continue to be relevant to crack your lower numbers. So I see how you justify it with your system, which I respect your system. But for me, he's a clear no. Now, the next guy that I have that I'm interested to hear your take, because I'm sure he's not on your list. But yes, I have a third relief pitcher on my list of 40. Hear me out, Dom. He's currently hurt for this year. However, he's 29 years old and has over 200 saves already. Okay. That pace is really good compared to other relievers in recent memory. Okay. He's a one candidate. He's a one stat candidate. It's got to be that 500 plus saves. It's Edwin Diaz.
Edwin Diaz. To me, it's hard to get into the Hall of Fame as a reliever. So, Edwin Diaz, if you're saying Henley's on the path, Kimbrel might get there. I even think Aroldis Chapman has a better chance at the Hall of Fame than Edwin Diaz. If you're going to take another shot on a third reliever that isn't Aroldis Chapman, I feel like you should have just went young with Emmanuel Clase. A guy that doesn't have the injury, already has 89 saves in 3 seasons as a closer, throws crazy stuff. Edwin Diaz has been very streaky in his career. The trumpets is awesome, but not a Hall of Famer in my eyes.
Class A is but he is at 89, but he is much younger. So just as far as relievers that have 200 plus plays active that aren't out of gas. That's why I went instead of but you could justify either way. Dart throw.
That's fair. I'll just talk about Chapman since I brought him up because he did squeak in towards the end of my list. He only has he doesn't have 400 saves, he has 300 something, but he's one of 14 relievers with over 1,000 strikeouts in his career, and he's someone that was truly dominant during his prime. He's going to be known for the fastest pitch ever in baseball history. That matters, I think, in the Hall of Fame. Like I said, did you strike fear into the opponents, especially as a relief pitcher? And I don't think Edwin Diaz is going to be looked at as that guy, even compared to Aroldis Chapman, who was an assassin for that Cubs World Series team that we were talking about with narratives and stuff like that. He was a big part of the reason why they went all the way. So Aroldis Chapman, to me, he's a fringe case. I don't think he gets there, but maybe an error committee is wow, Aroldis Chapman was the man for this stretch of years.
Well, yes, 300 saves. I don't think he's going to live to it. But it's ironic. Championing Matt Alonso, and I'm not Chapman. All right. We're gonna all here. The end. We've all left. I want to talk to a player do like. He's on both my fantasy teams, and I just love him. He got a little start in the age of rookie, but he's been really good so far. He's only usually on pace for 500 hits, but he could be on pace for 1,500 runs, 1,500 RBIs at the end of the in 3 seasons so far. He's got a average of 300, and he's got a long time. But Bobish knows.
I'm not quite as big of a Bobichek guy as you, but I don't know if you saw who I put at 40. Those two were like a coin flip for me to do it, and I kind of just went against you for the number game. But Bobichek, he led the league in hits 2 years in a row at 23 and 24. He's leading the league in hits right now. He's a sneaky guy for 3,000 hits. I think he came up too late to get there, but just a really good hitter. I wish he was a better defender. I think that would really help his Hall of Fame odds. But a guy that's going to be a quality hitter for a decade, so definitely worth mentioning for sure.
All right. Well, here for one here.
Yeah, so the last couple old crusty guys that I have on my list are Adam Wainwright and Corey Kluber. Two very different cases, a longevity guy and a peak guy. Now, Wainwright, 18th season, 46 WAR. He finished second in Cy Young voting twice. So he missed getting that hardware that you like to see out of a pitcher. But 3 wins away from 200. He played his entire career with the St. Louis Cardinals. I think the Hall of Fame always loves the one-team guys. He's a big fan of like the media. He's involved with all those writers and broadcasters and everything like that. I could see him sneaking into an error committee like Jim Cott just did as a like rubbing elbows, everyone likes him type of guy. And Corey Kluber, 2 Cy Youngs, to me, like that qualifier. If Tim Lincecum was still active, I'd put him on. If Yohan Santana was still active, I'd put him on. 2 Cy Youngs, maybe an error committee talks about you. An error committee almost put Allie Reynolds in one year, almost put in Billy Pierce another year. And those guys don't have 2 Cy Youngs. So Corey Kluber has been awful for my Red Sox this year, but 2 Cy Youngs with another top 3 finish in his career. Gotta respect it.
I would vote for Santana, and I was long to it. However, he's the only one of all that you just named that I would vote for. Now, we'll agree with Wainwright as he could in there as a committee guy. I don't have a because the season's not over. You pick on your national team, the Cardinals here. Will they score enough to get those more wins? 200. I'm being facetious. He's going to get 200.
They are so big about the milestones there. They were pushing him and Yachty to break the battery record. Like they will do everything they can to get him there.
He'll get it. He'll get 200. So I think that's right. Kluber, however, he does have 2 Cy Youngs. He's barely got over wins, and he's barely got over 1,500 strikeouts. I don't know if he's the 2,000 he's done. He's been really bad, like you mentioned here. You're throwing darts to get it. I get it, but I don't know this.
I just can't put guys that are 3 years into the league with no MVPs or Cy Youngs over a guy that won 2, you know? So that's why he's there. He's probably not going to make it, and one of these young guys will, but I didn't put anyone on my list that isn't at least in their 5th season currently, so he just had to be on mine. I just want to
smarter 3 years, 12 years, and 10 years. Just I can cut him off my picture if I want.
Exactly.
Right, I'll give him I'll go young guy here. Okay? You're not going to have him because he's been in the league less than 5 years. But I think you'll like my reason. He had 210 strikeouts in the season. He's currently leading MLB with 121 strikeouts. in 73 thirds inning. It's stupid early, but his average per 9 season, and this one so far, career, is 14.3 K per 9. This list can't all be dunks, again, guards, and guys. And I hope you already don't think Homer, but he's only 24 years old. Spencer Strider.
He is fantastic. It's just too early.
That's fair.
It's just too early. I put him at the very end of my article. I put like a paragraph saying that some of these guys that have less than service time could very well be on there, and I named him as like an honorable mention because the strikeouts are awesome. He is a true ace, even though he only throws 2 pitches. And I mean, if you're gonna bet on a young pitcher to make the Hall of Fame one day, I think he's one of the better bets. It's just, like we said, how is the Hall of Fame going to look at pitching going forward?
Yeah.
Will Spencer Strider be able to do enough? I don't know the answer to that question. I can't project it myself. So I'm leaning more towards the hardware and service time for pitchers than I am the projections, because you never know. They're blowing out their arms left and right, as we see in the major leagues nowadays.
Mm-hmm. So many things are wrong for pitchers, especially. It's so hard to. But again, wait, this list. Your turn, Doug.
Before I get into my 2 young guys that are like in their 5th season currently, I have to plant my flag. And this is a guy that I literally talked about on my podcast as the sneakiest active Hall of Famer, because he is just had a really good career, especially since 2019. But ever since he became an everyday player with the Oakland A's, Marcus Semien, I have his update gold rookie when he was a rotational infielder with the White Sox. This is a guy that 37.5 WAR in 11 seasons, and 2 of those seasons, like I said, he was not an everyday player at all. Very good analytically, and he's slashing since 2019. 265 batting average, 335 on base, 484 slugging, averaging 175 hits, 32 home runs, 94 RBIs, and 114 runs scored per 162. He's signed with Texas through 2028, and I think he's going to push for all my qualifiers: hits, home runs, RBIs, and runs. And like I said with Altuve, he's doing for it at second base. And unlike your boy Ozzy Albies, he's had a clean bill of health, and you can argue him to be the best player on his team, which I do think helps that narrative for a second baseman to be a Hall of Famer. He's second in the American League in WAR right now, and who knows, if Texas has this amazing season and Marcus Semien is their best player, maybe he wins an MVP. And that would put him on the Hall of Fame map for a lot more people than just me preaching to the choir. But I think he's a really sneaky case, and I've been looking at a lot of his stuff recently in the hobby.
If you're watching on YouTube, I am frantically rolling in my dumb discussion about versus Semien. I will say before I like rip this apart that
I was nice as Albies.
That Dom is correct in saying that I think Semien has a most sneaky potential Hall of Fame A's. So underrated any player that we talked about to bottom. However, I compared the 162 for Albies to Semien. Okay, so this is what we're at. 62 comparison, because they're different ages, they're different points of years played each one. Okay? Runs per 160. Albies 101, Semien 90. Hits 170 for Albies, 162 for Semien. Homers 26 for Albies, 25 for Semien. RBIs 91 for Albies, 80 for Semien. Stolen bases, both 60 for Simeon. K's, 120 for Albies, 136 for Simeon. Average, 269 Albies, 257 for Simeon. On base percentage, 320 for Albies, 320 for Simeon. Now, when Doug and I were having this discussion, I was actually shocked that Albies was better in all categories per 1, 2. Granted, Simeon and further along this year have stepped up similar for a longer period of time. It's really against his on. Do you really believe that because of this pace at a young age, Albies will continue to do it and at least surpass Simeon? Or do you think Simeon will continue to do it in his career? Albies will do the same thing. They're both reasonable. I just have to be on the Albies and Dom have to be on the Simeon side.
You know, I was nice about Albies. I said that he was worth considering. You just came at my Simeon take.
Oh, I did.
But I have two rebuttals. There's two clear rebuttals. The first one is that, like you said, you're comparing a larger amount of stats to that. So basically, what you're saying is, I wish Ozzy Albies is the mystery box in Family Guy, and you could have a boat, Marcus Simeon, or this mystery box, Ozzy Albies. It could be anything, even a boat. You're hoping that Ozzy Albies projects these 162 and is a slightly better Simeon. When Simeon already has like the body of work and has the big contract, the big offensive seasons. Like to me, it's Simeon all the way in terms of that. And like I said, him being considered like one of the best, if not the best players on his team compared to Albies, who is down the pipeline with the Braves stacked roster. I think that'll help too, whether it's an error committee or if he gets an MVP and sneaky stats continue to rise, maybe he even gets in through the writer's Simeon with the state of second base, which is another big thing. So I really like any MVP.
I can't agree with it. But I think if they both stick in second base, long term, that's going to help Casey significantly.
We can agree on that for sure.
All right, let's in there. All right. I'll go next with Simeon. I'm gonna go with last pitcher on my list. There's historically not a lot of hitters at the Hall. Mentioned several times already. We think how their view is gonna be a little bit different. This pitcher is over 80 games already, and he's over 14 carries at age 29. At least putting him on pace for 200 wins and 25 raise. He has a fairly long successful career. Aaron Noble. Did you even look at Noble?
No, I actually looked at him. He's better than I thought career-wise, but again, I can't trust young pitchers at this point, especially if they don't have the hardware. To me, if they don't have the hardware, I'm just not betting on them. And you see it in the hobby too. Pitchers go for way less than hitters do because they're way riskier. They only pitch once every fifth day. Like there's so much stuff into pitchers where I'm just not willing to make those bets. I'd rather make it on a hitter if the pitcher doesn't have the hardware yet. So Nola, I'm not saying he can't get there. I'm just not going to project it myself.
Fair enough.
And my last two young guys in their fifth seasons currently, they just made my cut. Yordan Alvarez, fifth season, 15.6 WAR. Now that David Ortiz is retired and enshrined, I went up to Cooperstown this past summer to see him get inducted. You're looking for like the next DH that is like the man, like a scary at bat. And of course Ohtani's a scary at bat, but he pitches too. It's a whole different animal. Alvarez, he was the most feared batter on that World Series team last year. He's won a Rookie of the Year and an ALCS MVP. I just think that he's someone that can push for your qualifier 400 home runs and is hits, home runs, runs, and RBIs. And the dude just doesn't hit cheap home runs. Like, they're all just mollywopped into the stands. I love watching him play, and it sounds different off of his bat. You can only say that for a handful of guys. He is a special hitter that if I had to pick, I would put my chips on him. And the last one is that second baseman we were talking about that moved to the National League. And that's Luis Ariz. 5th season, 12.9 WAR, a true slap ball hitter. He's on pace with batting average and hits with Tony Gwynn and Pete Rose through their first 444 games. Now, I'm not saying he's going to get 4,000 hits, but he is a very sneaky 3,000 hit guy. Doesn't give you anything defensively, but just a really good hitter. He's already got 1 batting title. He's well on his way to his 2nd batting title this year. I would be shocked if he doesn't end his career with at least 3 batting titles, which would be a qualifier, to go along with a real serious push for 3,000 hits if he can keep this up. And it's a breath of fresh air in the baseball world seeing him perform this way. I don't think he has 400, but people appreciating an average hitter like him, it's really awesome to see. And he's going to be a thorn in Ozzy Albies' side for those all-star appearances for the next half decade.
I love Luis Ariz. I love the high on base, piling hit after hit. He's got the one in I got a lot of hits. It's funny. We kind of pick and choose guys that are on stuff. They're too young. Can't project them out yet. And then other guy. No, I love him. I'm a money on him. I just had to put a rise on him. I couldn't even put him on. Especially if he's the second batting title. He'd be just one more away from having a second qualifier trophy. And if he happens to somehow run into 100, talk about an air to be the first guy to do it 80 plus years, that would hurt Hall of Famer. But I don't have the next guy I have, and this is purely based on getting started young and good young. That's really all I know about him. I've got one on my list. I don't have anything other than that. The last person that I have is a slam dunk at number. Okay. It's so obvious, especially if you watch a baseball this past week. It's Ellie Taylor. And that's a joke. Because he's going to play there's no way that I can realistically project Ellie Taylor. It's when I could, and Adam Wings. I couldn't think of Luis Ariz. I just tried that guy.
Yeah, you couldn't find somebody that had more than a week's worth of talent in the major leagues, you know?
Just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I put him on there. This whole extra that we're doing, even 40 players right now. There's a lot of predictions. Not things typical me or Dom, the way that we like things. We like the shirt. We like the home. We like the guys at the door. And I put David on here to say just he's played a week. Heaven forbid we could have a season or career ending injury tomorrow. Over. No single drop on a Hall of Fame. That's why we start the guys out a lot longer than the market. We're gonna talk about Hall of Fame guys that are actually retired for the most part. Yes. So I put Elvis kind of as a joke get ahead of time to make that. So that is my list.
We're both done with our lists, but I think that also illustrates the point that of time into this, and thank you to everyone who actually stuck through and listened to the whole thing. But nobody knows who's going to get into the Hall of Fame. I think I can speak for both of us that we would both be very happy if we were right on over 50% of our scores. Yeah. We would be happy with that. There's 6 that are no doubters. There's some guys that are pretty obvious that are on that way. But getting 20 out of 40 right, like that's awesome. You need 75% of the vote to get into the Hall of Fame. I'm confident in my 30, but I'm probably not going to get the 75% that I need on my list. So, really fun exercise. Tons of great guys. I give you props for throwing people on there that don't have going on their 5th year of service time. That was kind of just a buffer that I made for myself because I know there's stars out there like Corbin Carroll and Julio Rodriguez that we didn't even name that look like superstars in the making, but they very much could be a flash in the pan and not end up living up to that hype. And the way we hobby, we're not spending money on those guys.
There's a reason we didn't show cards hardly at all. 15 guys.
Yeah. Because we put our money where our mouth is for the most part. If it's cheap, sure, but like we have to believe that these guys are Hall of Famers to be really collecting them. Because otherwise we'd rather be gravitating towards the vintage stuff that we need of the guys that their career's done, their stories are told, and they're already in the Hall of Fame. And you can get those guys sometimes for a fraction of the guys who haven't even played a week in the major leagues, like Ellie De La Cruz. So this was really fun talking with you, and I'm looking forward to the next one of these. Let us know in the comments below what you thought of this, who you agree with more's list, and who you guys think we left off, because I'm sure there's plenty of players out there that me and Jake did not acknowledge that some of you guys out there are prospecting as possible future Hall of Famers.
And this sets the whole premise of what we're talking about why we retired guys. The ones that are much more like the was guys playing. Even my list years ago, there was 68 guys considered for the 2023 list. And that tells you what you want to know as far as putting money where our mouth in terms of collecting. So if you want to find me, like I mentioned, on YouTube, I like Legendary Guy, or you can be on Instagram at Legendary Guy. I can speak for myself. If you shoot some message there on YouTube, we will definitely we would love to talk with you with the Hall of Fame. In case anybody wants to follow you on Instagram, where can they?
Yeah, if you want to talk Hall of Fame, and especially Hall of Fame collecting, my baseball card channels are under Staven Sports Cards, both on YouTube and on Instagram. You can find me there. Always willing to talk cards, and especially when it has to do with the Hall of Fame. This has been really awesome, and I hope that this can spark more conversations like this offline and on YouTube of people talking about the Hall of Fame, because man, it is truly a special honor and thing that is super important in the hobby, especially for guys like me and Jake.
So thanks for joining us, and make sure to join us next time as we continue crack to collecting. God bless.
We're out.